when we are taught a doctrine that does not motivate us to improve our quality of life, then we must re-examine that doctrine. Nat Turner was one who lived in a setting that is very similar to ours. The setting we live in is more mental. The setting he lived in was more physical, although there is physical deprivation as we're being shot down in the street by brutal police and other mysterious deaths of black people going across the country. But in those days, it was blatant. No one tried to hide it. To kill a black man, to kill a black woman, to kill a black baby was no big deal if the master decided that's what he wanted to do with his property. Judge Taney, a Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America, of the what? Not of Russia, not of Yugoslavia, not of Poland, but of the United States of America, said that black people had no rights that a white man must acknowledge. That is what they said in this country, and that was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States. That shouldn't come as a surprise to us. I once heard a white boy say, I think it was David Duke, one of the Ku Klux Klansmen, whenever they're speaking, I stop and listen. Very careful. I want to know what my enemy is doing. Understand? Don't get angry because I say enemy now. I would be a fool to stand up here and say we don't have any enemy, or that our enemy is ourselves alone. I wouldn't do that. That's not facing reality. That's like the ostrich burying his head in the sand with his behind out to the world. And he said something that was so clear. He said, I don't know why you're so upset with us. The founding fathers of this country were racist, were slaveholders, were segregationists. This country was not set up with the objective of black people being anything else but servants. So this was an idea that was forced upon them later. But it was never included in the Constitution of the United States that you should be that. They had to have an amendment to the Constitution, which still isn't clear. Still isn't clear. Still doesn't make you a citizen of this country. The point that I'm seeking to draw here is this: that Nat Turner understood this. And he looked around him and he said, I don't like the situation that I'm in. But that's nothing strange. Most slaves don't like the situation that they're in. But you have to get beyond the point of not liking it. You have to move to the next level, which is what? Doing something about it. This is part of the gospel that Nat Turner taught. Are you with me? So I want to study something tonight. I want to do some teaching. I know y'all like a lot of preaching. I'm going to do some preaching, but I'm going to do some teaching too. And I'm going into the book, God, the Bible, and the Black Man's Destiny, which I certainly appreciate you buying, which is on sale here tonight. And I'm quoting, as I have it set down on page 155 from one of my favorite writers, which is Lerone Bennett. And he says that the missionary version of Christianity, which was drilled into the minds of the slaves, it was what? Drilled. And you wonder why. Well, you say, but that happened way back then. No, brother and sister, it still happened to you. You wonder why you are schizophrenic. You wonder why you have problems working with your brothers and sisters. You wonder why you have contradictions in you. And every great leader we have had has had some contradictions, and you want to put them down on that basis. But you can't do that. You are negating the realities of the impact of slavery on all of us. I like the way the Bible puts it. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We're all slaves. I ain't no slave shop. I can go anywhere I want to, walk anywhere I want to. You do not control those things which your life is dependent upon for its very sustenance. If white folks decide tomorrow to cut off everything, you have but two alternatives. Let it go at that, lay down and die, or go off and fight. There are no others to that. So you have that, no control of your, well, if a black man get in there, it's going to be just bad. At least you have something to appeal to in him. You can keep working on that, and white folks, there is nothing for you to appeal to. Your nature is, I'm not saying that to be a racist, that's true. I mean, after thousands of years of history, you should be able to see that there are two distinct kinds of beings you're dealing with. That goes deeper than the color of the skin. It's deeper than the color of the skin. That's right, it is. White folks are white because of a reason. They got out of harmony with nature. Wasn't no white folks on earth for millions of years. You ask white scholars behind closed doors, they'll tell you. They don't know how they got here. So they say, I came out the cave. That's all they know. They don't know anything else. Let me get back to this. The missionary version of Christianity and got you thinking you came out the cave too. That you, what's that cartoon there on television? You think you into that, see? The missionary version of Christianity, which was drilled into the minds of the slaves, repelled that. In the Old Testament, in the blood and doom passages, he found a corroboration of his manhood. You see, they never wanted you to read the Bible. Let me get something straight with you here. You say the white man gave you the Bible. He did not. He never wanted you to read the Bible. He never wanted you to read anything because he knew it was dangerous for you to read anything. Nat Turner, when he was a boy, would get on his knees and plead with his master, who he was supposed to have a good master, a kind master, would get on his knees and say, please, master, teach me how to read. He said, ain't no nigga supposed to know how to read. It's dangerous for nigga to know how to read. Your mind gets troubled when you read. And you get the disease. What disease was he talking about? In their medical books in that day, they had a disease called drapetomania. What was drapetomania? The fact that slaves would become dissatisfied and want to escape from their masters. And they say, if you Negroes read, you're going to get drapetomania, and you don't want that. That'll hurt you, boy. Not say, but master, I don't want to learn to read nothing else but the Bible, the Word of God, because I want to take it to my brothers and sisters out in the slave cabin who need the light of Christ so they can live right and obey their masters. White man looked at him. Yeah, that might not be a bad idea. Not knew what he was doing. He taught him to read the Bible. This was a great mistake. The very man who taught him to read the Bible woke up on August the 21st around about midnight, and that axe was coming down on his head. And Nat had gotten that from reading the Bible. He got it from reading the Bible. If you read it right, and I don't know how y'all read the Old Testament and come out telling me to turn the other cheek. There are more bloody battles on there than you find in any movie or television show. They put their brothers in there, put 007 to shame. They were taking care of Gideon, and Joshua was taking care of business. They didn't play, but I'm not going to get in that subject right now. He said, but he saw in those texts a corroboration of his own manhood. He had come into a world of slaves. So violent was the world that he came into that his mother, out of love for him, this may be difficult for you to comprehend in 1983, but had you been living in 1800, here Gabriel Prosser died and gave his life for this struggle. and saw the condition of black people at that time, his mother said, before I bring another slave in this world, I'll kill him. They had to tie her up to keep her from killing that baby. But she didn't love her child. She didn't want to bring another slave in the world. Those are the conditions that he was born on October the 2nd, 1800, or 183 years ago. This black baby came into the world, but they knew not what was coming. Uneventful, born in the slave cabin, except for the fact that his mother tried to take his life, but that wasn't unusual. Many African women sought to take the lives of their babies rather than bring them into slavery. But when she looked on his body, she observed certain marks. Something told her, said, this is a special child. His daddy looked at him and said, this is a special child. As he grew up in the neighborhood around him, they said, the white folks would come and look at him and say, he's too smart. He's supposed to be that smart. He'll never make a good slave. He's too smart, even as a child. Nat was telling the future, telling things that had happened before he came here, so that the community began to call him a prophet. And that's where we get our subject, the gospel, according to old Nat, the prophet. That's what they called him back then. Now, when the community get together and call you a prophet, you're a prophet. If they respect you in that direction and look to you in that way because of his moral character, he neither drank nor smoked, nor he didn't even take money. He had a completely ascetic life, and all he did when he wasn't at the plow was read the Bible, pray, and get instructions from his God so that he could become a liberator for his people. He had a moral life, a clean life. You understand what I'm saying to you? And every leader that has come to us has had to deal with our what? Moral. Because the master has made you so immoral through his dirt and his filth. And he looked in there and saw his manhood. Because a man who is in bondage to another man cannot be a man as long as he accepts that bondage. He only becomes a man when he takes his own destiny into his hands and confronts his master and says, I am a free man whether I live or die. Ain't that what Patrick Henry said? Give me liberty or give me death. You thought that was wonderful, didn't you? That he said that to the British. And you just jump up and down when you hear that. But what happened when Nat Turner said he looked in the Old Testament and saw his manhood? Because it said he must confront his slave master. Let's move on now. And in the New Testament, he found a despised man, a racial outcast, a poor man, a revolutionary who cursed fig trees and violently drove money changers from profane temples. Who was that man that he saw in the New Testament? A racially outcast man. Why could Nat Turner identify with that man? Because he understood that that man, 2,000 years earlier, was a black man who was fighting for his liberation from a white man, the Roman power structure. And Nat saw himself in that year, 1828, also fighting the Romans again here in the United States of America. A black man fighting for his freedom against white men. I know you may think that this is violent, but you must study this. I'm not telling you to get up and walk out here and start smacking white folks upside the head. Strategically, that wouldn't be good to do. Morally, it would be correct. But I don't want to see you going to jail on no humble. I'd like to see us have a scientifically well-planned, protracted struggle. And I hope it's not protracted too much longer. So this is not what we're saying. We're stating to you that it is morally correct to defy your oppressor. It is immoral not to do so. That is what caused Jesus his life, but that's another subject. He wasn't hung on no cross for your sin, or mine either. He was hung on the cross because he rebelled, had the nerve and the audacity to proclaim himself king of his people. That meant he brought himself into political, not only religious, political opposition to the Roman Empire and the handkerchief-head preachers of his day. You got to understand the real Jesus. I'm going to come back one day, preach the sermon with the real Jesus. Please stand up. Are you all right? Are you with me? When Nat, I'm talking about whose gospel now? The gospel according to old Nat the prophet. This is what he saw as a theologian of the gospel of black liberation. He said he saw a revolutionary in Jesus. What is a revolutionary? A revolutionary is one, as Brother Malcolm taught us, who seeks change. One who does not accept conditions as they are, but sets about to correct those conditions. That's what a religion is supposed to do for you. Whether you're Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Israelite, it doesn't matter. Akan, Yoruba, y'all got to stop fighting over all them things. Muslims not talking to Christians, and Christians not talking to Israelites, and you don't pray this way and don't do that way, brothers and sisters. The white man only sees one thing when he sees Africans. Something he can exploit, and if not, destroy. That's all he sees. He doesn't see those differences. Therefore, those differences must not exist among us. Please pray to Allah and remember Ishakamusa as you do. And when I am in your temple, I will take my salat too. Please pray to Jesus and remember Ishakamusa when you do. When I am in the church, I will pray to him too. Please honor the prophet Moses. When I am in the synagogue of the black people, I will too. Please honor Shango. That's where I pull my energy from. That thunder and lightning and power of Shango. It's all one, brothers and sisters. And it seems that wherever I go, I have to stop and deal with that, because that is a concept that the Creator is trying to get through to you now. What speaker to black people stands before you today that does not bring that home to you? Because it is so important. Before you were brought here as a slave, you knew nothing about all these differences. You created every religion that is worthy of being called one, and you existed with each other in the frame of reference of those religions. There were battles from time to time, yet we found ways to work things out. We must do that now. He saw a revolutionary who cursed fig trees and violently drove money changers from the profane temples. I like Nat's description of Jesus, because the one they usually portray to us is the blonde-haired, blue-haired boy with his wrist hanging down, holding a lamb. That's so sweet. That when you touch it so delicately when he sat down. That wasn't Jesus. That kind of man couldn't have drove money changers out of no temple. You know what money changers was like? That's like going down on Wall Street and driving in the middle of the trading session and driving folks out of there. You got to understand the reality. And that is what the gospel, according to old Nat the prophet, deals with. Reality. Consumed by the images and visions of the Old and New Testament, Nat Turner turned the book. He did what? Turned the book against the people who had given it to him. The more Nat read the Bible, the more he became convinced that he was destined to lead his people out of slavery. That is the gospel, according to old Nat the prophet. But you know, there were other black theologians there in those days, around that era. And I want to talk about a few of them, because with old Nat the prophet, they worked together. I'm going to go back to the Bible text now. Are you all right? You still with me? I'm going to go back to the Bible text, the first one now, and I'm going to take it apart. The way we do in the seminary. It's what they call an exegesis. That just means breaking it down. It says, for if a man think himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. Now, without somebody to give some clarity on that, you would become confused. What does it mean for a man to think that he is something when he is nothing? He deceiveth himself. This is the principle number one I want to deal with there of that text. And that principle is this, that an oppressed man is nothing if he is not a revolutionary. An oppressed man is nothing if he is not a revolutionary. Let's go now to another great theologian of that time. And his name is the Right Reverend. Anybody know where I'm going? Got any idea where I'm going? The Right Reverend David Walker. And he says, in David Walker's appeals, I prayed. And Nat was in total agreement. What Walker wrote, Nat lived and carried out in his life. In Boston, he published his appeals. David Walker did in the year 1829. In the year 1828, Nat was coming to receive and understand that he had a special mission that he had to fulfill to the race. You see how all those things were operating together there. When the Spirit moves, the Spirit moves. And if you be in tune with the Spirit, be in tune with the plan, even if you don't know what it is, get in tune with it. You'll know what to do. And he said, now here's Nat down there in Southampton County, Virginia, and here's David Walker up in Boston, Massachusetts. I pray that the Lord may undeceive, may do what? My ignorant brethren, and permit them to throw away pretensions and seek after the substance of learning. That text for a man to say he is something when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. What David Walker says to us here is he was talking to some Negroes of his day who thought because they had been allowed to study under the white man in the North and gotten a few degrees, or at least rubbed shoulders with some, that they were wiser than the slave in the field, that they had become free, that they had become something. But he strove to teach them that you are nothing, that you not only deceive yourself, you're pretending to be a man, if you do not seek the real substance of learning. What is the real substance of learning? What is the object of anything that one learns, any discipline or field you go into? What is the object of going into that study? Will someone tell me, please? Huh? To progress, to move forward, to become functional, to become better and more functional at what you do. The word education comes from the Latin word educa, which means to bring out the best in a person. And if what you learn and what you are taught does not bring out the best in you, then you are not educated, no matter how many degrees you may have. If you, therefore, do not have your own land, if you are not independent as a people, you have therefore not been educated, but you have been miseducated. For you have not learned to take what you know and make it functional to achieve the total objective of the black man at this stage of history, which is what? Land and self-determination. So all of us in here are ignorant. Reverend Dr. Ishakamusa included. Because we have not achieved our aim at this time. So we must take that under consideration. He goes on to say here, an educated man is a revolutionary man. What? Particularly in a situation of oppression. Do you suppose that one man of good sense and learning would submit himself, his father, mother, wife, and children to be slaves to a wretched man like himself? Said, now, you don't have good sense to do this. If you're allowing someone to continue to oppress you, whether that oppression be covert or overt, you therefore haven't got good sense. You're sick in the head. The Bible says the whole head is sick. We got to be ill to be in this condition. And you know, I get this feeling that we're just right, like there's a veil between, we're just right there at it. I get this feeling that it's not far away, but it seems to be so distant because we can't get in tune with ourselves, each other, and the plan. Because each man's ego wants to think his piece of the plan is the total plan. It don't work like that. You are not the creator. You don't know the end from the beginning. Your organization, what you're doing, only knows a part of it, but it's an important part. Everybody gets a piece of it. And you must come to that light. But I do sense that we're not far away from it. I remember as I go back in the Bible, I get all my material that the Creator gave me tonight, but I'm going to cover, and when I sense that you can't take no more, I'm going to stop. I know how to feel. I don't want you to be tortured just sitting here listening. I may not follow the course of action that I've planned, but I'm going to move with the Spirit. I remember when the children of Israel, it's a story now, there's a lot of debate on that historically, and I'm not going into that. But the principle is what I'm dealing with. Was 11 days journey. How many days? From the promised land that they were going after. And they were going after some land. They weren't going to heaven. They was on their way to get some what? They left one piece of land going after some more. Because you can't be yourself. You can't serve your God unless you have your own what? Got to have it. So they're going to the land. They're 11 days journey away from the land. The only thing kept them from getting in the land was doubt and fear. The very people that they were going to take the land from, which was incorrect, and I'm using an illustration now. One group of black people taking land from another group. We're trying to get a principle here. We're more afraid of them, thinking they were more in number than they were afraid of going in the land. But because they would not move, check this out, and take that straightforward fight into the land, what would have been 11 days became 40 years. You know why that was done? So that all the doubters could die out. When the doubters died out, then Joshua and Caleb, if you remember the story, went in and took the land and put all to the sword. They didn't just the walls of Jericho fell down. They did what? They fought the battle of Jericho. And it was a bloody battle. It was a battle of genocide. They wiped out the inhabitants of the land. I didn't say I approved of it. I just say the revolutions tend to be bloody. Now, I'm not to say that we should be preoccupied with blood. You do what you have to do when you have to do it. And you keep a peaceful state of mind. There was no more peaceful man than Nat Turner. When the Creator showed Nat Turner that he would have to rise up, he showed him spirits in the sky fighting and struggling and blood flowing. He said, oh Lord, I don't want a part of that. So Nat, how do you get up from oppressor? How do you get from under? What must be done, Nat. I send you forth to do. He was a peaceful man who hated violence, but he was not the perpetrator of violence. He was the victim of it. And the only way that the violence could be corrected was to land a blow of violence. It was a fight fire with fire situation. So in those 48 hours, over 60 white folks, babies included. I know you don't like this part. Think about it. When they came out of the first house, the Travis house, I'm not going to give you all details of the story. You can go and do some reading on your own. I'm sure you've done it already. When they came out of the house, there was still an infant left. Nat said, do what? Why? Because nits make life. One day that child would grow up and oppress his child. That's the reality you had to face. Now, I'm not telling you to go kill no. Please understand me. I'm not telling you to go kill nobody's baby. Now, I'm not telling you to do any of those things. When the time is given and the Lord moves, what has to be done will be done. I only say this, that you must not let anyone or anything stand between you and your freedom. And you see it coming. Nothing. Don't you go out there tomorrow killing up a whole bunch of white folks acting crazy. We need you here now. Time is not yet. It may not be too long, though. God moves in mysterious ways. There's wonders to perform. That's not violence. That's a reality. When I look at my babies, I look at their babies, if something got to go, it's not going to be mine. I'm not going to have mine down at the pig trough eating and fighting with the dogs for pig food no more. Not as pretty as my children are. No more than my grandchildren. No more days like that. Somebody got to go. It won't be me, as Dr. Ben said, when he go over that mountaintop, somebody going with me. I'm going into, so we established the first principle here that an oppressed man is nothing. He doesn't become a revolutionary. Now, we know how that applied to Nat's day. We know that that was carried out in a raw fashion. There was no other way to carry it out. You couldn't intellectualize that. You had an oppressor right there, whipping you every day, wouldn't allow you to be a man or to be a woman. Take your woman, take your sister, take your mother anytime you want, take your behind anytime he wanted to. They were faced with a situation. There was no intellectualizing there. You just went straight forward. Took care of business. That's what we faced. Same thing George Washington was faced with. They didn't intellectualize with the British. They did what? They shot at them. And when Peter Salem, at the Battle of Bunker Hill, bust the cap in Major Pitcairn, white folks stood up and rejoiced. The only time they stood up and rejoiced when a black man shot a white man. He wasn't called a terrorist. He wasn't called a criminal. Why wasn't he? Because he was fighting for the white man's freedom from the white man. He only becomes a terrorist. He only becomes bloody. He only becomes a criminal when he fights for his own freedom and sheds blood for his own freedom. Somebody else's blood, his enemy's blood. That is. We go now to the next verse. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another. What does that mean? That brings to me a second principle of the gospel according to old Nat the prophet. And that second principle is this: the responsibility of freeing the oppressed is on to who? The oppressed. No one liberates the oppressed. They liberate themselves. Well, why this man keep talking about all this oppression? I understand back in Nat Turner's day, back in slavery times. Why Why is he talking about that in 1983? Ain't nobody oppressed. Are you living the life you really want to live? Do you enjoy this life the way it is? Do you like the idea that a Wild West cowboy that ain't got good sense decide whether you get your foreign aid check or not? Do you like living like that? Do you like everything that black folks in the civil rights era fought for, died for, is being slowly taken away from? Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy being the highest among the unemployed in the country? Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy your life being so precariously perched upon uncertainty so that you're not even sure of the air you breathe and the water you drink? Whether the neighborhood you live in today will be there a year from now. You're not even sure of that. Why aren't you sure of it? Because, as according to the New African Creed, it says we lack the power to control our own lives. I don't like that. Call me wild, call me crazy, call me whatever you want to, but I am power hungry. I don't want power over nobody else. I want power over me. But I know I cannot have power over Ishakamusa unless I collectively have power with my brothers and sisters over the area that we live in, over that which we inhabit in the world. Man, don't you know the Lord is tired of calling you to this? Been calling you so long, gave up so many for you. I don't know how much longer he's going to wait. But there's a train coming. Get on board, brothers and sisters, get on board. I'm going now to another black theologian. I'm not going to be too much longer. But I'm going now to Reverend Henry Highland Garnett, another preacher who preached the gospel according to old Nat the prophet. Did you know we had that many theologians? We have a lot more than that. And in the year 1843, this is what Reverend Henry Highland Garnett said. This is a preacher man now. I want you to understand this. Some preachers today walk around talking this talk. I want you to know what real preachers had to say. When we get down to this situation that the oppressed have the responsibility of liberating themselves. Brethren, the time has come when you must act for yourselves. You must do what? Act. Get into motion. We can walk around and talk as much as we want to about what's wrong, what Reagan's doing. That shouldn't even bother you at all. You must understand that your existence does not depend on him, on John Wayne, reincarnated, but it rests in your hands. And if you truly, truly believe in God, that's my challenge to all black people who say they believe in God. If you truly believe, then you would know that there is no power on earth greater than the Creator. Therefore, you would fear no one. And you would get up and do what you have to do. And you know what it is you have to do. We don't know. We don't have a lot of leadership now. We're confused. All you have to do is look back at what you've been taught. Examine what you've been taught. Look at the program of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Look at the program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Look at the programs that have been laid. You had more programs than anybody else in the world. You don't need anything new. You just need to carry those things out. You don't need to wait until the whole race gets together before you move. You're going to sit up in front of the television and smoke dope and say, well, when we get it together, I'm going to join the revolution. Nat Turner started out with 4 men. 4. And you know, Nat planned to take the whole state of Virginia. You know that? Nat wasn't playing. He was going to take the county seat. Then he would truly believe in God. That's my challenge to all black people who say they believe in God. If you truly believe, then you would know that there is no power on earth greater than the Creator. Therefore, you would fear no one. And you would get up and do what you have to do. And you know what it is you have to do. We don't know. We don't have a lot of leadership now. We're confused. All you have to do is look back at what you've been taught. Examine what you've been taught. Look at the program of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Look at the program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Look at the programs that have been laid. You had more programs than anybody else in the world. You don't need anything new. You just need to carry those things out. You don't need to wait until the whole race get together before you move. You're going to sit up in front of the television and smoke dope and say, well, when we get it together, I'm going to join the revolution. Nat Turner started out with 4 men. 4. And you know, Nat planned to take the whole state of Virginia. You know that? Nat wasn't playing. He was going to take the county seat. Then he was going to take the county. Then he was going to move for the state. And if he got trapped up, he was going to fight a guerrilla warfare from the Dismal Swamp. Once he got up in there, they'd have never been able to get him. That's the plan he had in mind. And I'm going to tell you what happened. He could have carried that plan out. I'm going to tell you in a little bit as we move down. But look at this. He didn't wait until all the slaves agreed with him. You know, them niggas done gone on back. Ain't no sense in us messing with him no more. We taught them in the 60s and 70s. Now they out there, Jerry Carolyn and this going it. But they're your brothers and sisters. What happened to you? When the Jew boy took the camera away, you stopped? Suddenly the struggle isn't popular anymore because you're not getting applauded? Because everybody's not wearing a push? Because everybody's not wearing a dashiki? And a boober, you going to stop? And sit down? Do nothing? And then what you do is destroy yourself. You get caught up in your own sicknesses then. You get caught up in your own sicknesses and start squabbling with each other. I'm talking right now, I'm talking to all black people. Right now I'm talking to the black nationalists, of which I am one. I am a black nationalist revolutionary. I am a separatist. I am that now. I will probably always be that. If you see me change, send me on to glory. Because I see no other logical way to be. That's the only way that makes sense to me. And it's not about racism or anything like that. I'm not concerned about anybody else. I'm concerned about black people. Now I have to deal with other people. I have to observe them because they're here. Unfortunately. You got to do business with them. You got to do all that, but I don't want to play with them. I don't want to play it with me. I'm not trying to save America. I'm not trying to save. I'm trying to save the world, yeah, so it can get back to the original people that it belonged to. Because the Bible says when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. People not rejoicing, righteous not in authority. Let me get on back to here now. I'm getting my inspiration from these brothers now. Their voices are speaking from the ethers to us tonight. You must act for yourself. And even though the people think we're crazy and locked in a time vacuum, you old niggas with that 60s stuff, y'all done got wasted in a time vacuum. I got black folks who come to me and say, I used to be black. And I'm pretty diplomatic till you reach that point with me. And something goes ding in my head and I go off. What? And they think we're crazy. And quiet as it kept, we act crazy. We get eccentric. Wasted in our own knowledge. You got so much, the nationalists is actually the smartest people in our race. You know that? But you got so much of knowledge, it's like a stick of dynamite. If you don't handle it right, it'll blow you up. And it'll blow you up. You want everybody to have the same diet you do. You want everybody to wear the same thing you do. You want everybody to say the same thing you say, and if they don't, you get mad with them and turn on them. You can't do that. You're going to have to go do your job now. You should never have got this knowledge if you wasn't going to use it. And if you don't go do your job, the Lord knows how to make you do it. I know. He whipped me for many a year. I know what he'll do. I'm trying to save you that whipping. And we have to be diplomatic. You can't jump up in their face no more now, or they'll turn you off. So you have to be patient and striving. But you have to bring these people in. There's black folks out there that's got some money. This movement needs money. You don't run no revolution with no ducats. Not in 1983. You have to have ducats. So you have to go to them. And you can't just step in their face and say, look, you ought to be giving them. People don't do what they ought to do. You have to give them a logical, concrete reason for doing it. So that's where you have to sharpen yourself. I'm talking to everybody in here. But most people in here are nationalists. Are in the culture. And you have a duty as an ambassador for the new world. And if you don't carry out that duty, you will stand before the judgment bar of God. And your life will be required of you. All right, let me move on. Have mercy, Lord. Look around you and behold the bosoms of your loving wives, heaving with untold agony. Hear the cries of your poor children. And remember the stripes that your fathers bore. Black women are in a state of confusion today. They don't know whether they want to go with Gloria Steinem or what they want to do. They don't know whether they want. Now, I agree with rights, women's rights, to the extent that if a woman does a job I do, she should get paid for that job the same way I do, if she's going to do that job. But I want you to hear this, black man. The world will never respect you as a man if you do not make the world respect your woman. And you must, in one way you get the world to respect your woman is not smacking your woman upside the head, not lording over her, but using your mind. You should control the economy in your community. What did I say? And the nationalists of all people, most of us can't get no jobs anyway. Some of us got FBI records, all kind of stuff. If we can spend $160 billion in 1 year, which we did last year, why are you sitting around worried about how you're going to make ends meet and waiting for the next foreign aid check to come? Or to get what you can get. They owe it to you. I don't talk about welfare, foreign aid, because I am not a citizen of this country. I'm just getting some foreign aid, same way Israel getting some, Poland getting some. Just they only send us a few $100s. You know. Get what you can. But it ain't welfare. Welfare is for citizens. Foreign aid. Foreign aid, they come day after tomorrow. Yeah. You know what it comes to. Banks be crowded. But while you're doing that, you must be making plans, collectively, to get out of that syndrome. As Nat met with 4 men and then 3 others joining me at 7 men, if you can't work with a bunch of people, get 2 or 3 brothers and sisters you can work with. But build some kind of economic enterprise that feeds the needs of black people and becomes self-sufficient. There's no other way to do this. Why are institutions closing down? because we do not have the funds to keep them. Is Harvard closing down? Of course not. Why isn't Harvard closing down? Because AT&T and Xerox and IBM and all those companies keep Harvard alive. The only way your institutions will survive is that you economically keep them alive. So, brothers and sisters, it is very revolutionary, I say what? To study the principles of business, of commerce, of enterprise, and to put them into practice. As Walimu, Dr. Chancellor Williams says in the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, I don't remember it verbatim, but he says that every advancement on the part of blacks throughout our history has always been accompanied by economic development. And don't be afraid to think in billions. You spend billions. You spent over $2 billion in Coca-Cola last year. Coca-Cola. $1 billion and something in chewing gum. You chewed up over $1.5 billion. That's counter-revolutionary. You may have to start out small, but and don't start out with what you like to buy. Look at what the people are buying. And if it's not against your principles, don't sell them no dope. Don't sell them nothing that's going to hurt them. But if it's not against your principles, sell it. Market it. Go out door to door. Look, I'm planning to get in this, so I'm going into it. I'm not going to be much longer, but I hope we can sit here and take this in, and not only take it in, but put it to work. There's no more bread man in the black community. There's no more milkman in the black community. There's no more bakery man from door to door in the black community. But we're still purchasing those products. And we're purchasing them from Pathmark and everywhere else. There are black farmers in the South losing their land every day. Because when they go to the market, Kroger will not give them the price that they're asking. And they would rather plow the crops back in the ground. Why don't you have trucks going to the farm just over in Delaware and Jersey, bringing it back? Why don't you have, if you got to rent cold space for the warehouse, why don't you do that? And if you don't have no more than a push cart, bring it from there to the people and put it on the tables of black people. That's revolutionary. You don't think it is. You get into that business, which is a multi-billion-dollar business, and see what you have to fight white folks right away. That's why when you set that up, you must also set up your what? Your defense, your military, your security system. Why do you think these men struggled so hard all these years to tell you this? I tell you, it ain't nothing new. Why did the Honorable Marcus Garvey work so hard at this? Why did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad import tons and tons upon tons of fish in? Why? So that you could become self-sufficient, and you can do it. You can do it. Not without a struggle. I hear you say, I'm getting tired of this. I want to throw down. I want to hasten the day of the revolution. Do that and you will. He spoke here about remembering the stripes. The Chinese have kept the signs that was put up that said, for dogs and Chinese only, when the English oppressed them in their land. And that's why we're going over old Nat the Prophet today and some of the events which took place then, so that you can remember and never forget, so that you can teach your children and never forget. Have the Americans let their children forget that they fought for their liberation from England? And why does not your child, why does not every black school, there's not a black school in this country named after Nat Turner? Not one. Why? But they fear that kind of man. but they're named after George Washington. Nathaniel and all them folks. I'm almost through. I can feel it coming now. He went on to say, think of the torture and disgrace of your noble mothers. Think of your wretched sisters, loving virtue and purity, as they are driven into concubinage and are exposed to the unbridled lust of incarnate devils. You know, that wasn't the first time that they came up when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us they was the devil. Does hateful things. That's what a devil is. And he said, think of your mothers. One of the things that greatly impressed Nat Turner is when he was a boy, his baby sister had a cold, and she was weak, and her mother was afraid the child was going to die because it was so drafty in those slave quarters back there. So she went and took one of the master's brother's shirt, red flannel shirt. She took it. She had a right to take it. She took it and wrapped her baby in it, and when some field hand told on her, they came and found her and beat that woman to the ground, took her by her hair, kicked her in her stomach, punched her in her mouth, swole up her face. Nat's baby sister lay trembling and crying. Nat as a child lay crying with tears rolling down, holding his baby sister as his mother took this whipping so she could save her daughter's life. That's not the only mother that has taken those whippings. I remember one day when I was a child of about 7 years old, and you know how dirty children can get playing out in the street? And my mother was washing me in the tub. Might have been a little younger than that. And all this dirt had built up around the tub. You know how it is when you're a child, how dirty it gets. The bathtub ring and the dirt floating on it. And she got a far-away look in her eyes, a very strange look. And I looked at her and I said, Mother, what's the matter? I sensed as a child that something was wrong. She said, my father used to tell me, my grandfather used to tell me of how the white man used to make the slaves drink their water after they took a bath in it. She said, I just thought about that. It just came across my mind. Now, that's just a few of the things that were happening to black people. And why do I say you must never forget? Because when you forget, you become stagnant. You become lazy. I'm not saying that you should operate on the principle of hate and walk around all knotted up inside. I got to get them. No. You must be at peace within yourself, but you remember these things so that you will always know who you are dealing with. And the only reason why they don't do it to you today is because it's not as easy then. It's not as easy now as it was then. And it's because of men like Nat Turner that it's not as easy. Neither God nor angels or just men command you to suffer for a single moment. Therefore, it is your solemn and imperative duty to use every means, both moral and intellectual and physical, that will promise success. And I'm going to this here last text now, part of the text, and I'm going to read from Nat Turner, and I'm going to close out. As it says here, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And that principle is this: the immutable law of karma. What goes around, comes around. That is why Minister Farrakhan and others can stand up and say that America is doomed. America knows that is true. The object of the teachers is not to save America, but to keep you from being crushed in that doom. For the hour is at hand. And I know it's hard for you to conceive because they look so strong to you right now. But I'm going to read one more thing about Nat Turner. Say a little bit more about him. I'm going to close out. And we see here on page 54, Pioneers in Protest by Lerone Bennett, he states thusly: the prototype of 20th century revolutionaries, Nat Turner reminds us that oppression is a kind of violence and coins of its own minting. He reminds us that the first and greatest of all gospels is this, that individuals and social systems always reap what they sow. All things that go around must come around. America doesn't want the black man to come into a knowledge of himself and go on his own. If she meant us any good, it wouldn't bother her for us to do this. Why would she feel the need to unleash a whole COINTELPRO project and millions of dollars of the taxpayers' dollars on the Republic of New Africa? Why? When all we ever said was that we were not Americans, we had sense enough to understand that, and we wanted some land of our own where we could build our own. We didn't say we were going to do anything to them. Why, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had farms down there in Alabama with cattle and chickens, chickens taste better than Purdue chickens. Why did the white men poison those cattle? Why are they so afraid of the black man getting his own? Why? Because they know, even if you don't know, what your destiny is. Why have they put forth such effort to mess up your mind, to keep you into silly music that won't allow you to think? Why is the white man claiming jazz as America's classical music, as America's only indigenous music? Why is he listening to it in his nightclub while you're out shaking your behind with the lights flashing to somebody saying, yeah, yeah, ooh, baby, baby, and such nonsense as that, while the chords that they are playing in the music come out of the witchcraft rituals of the old druids up in England? Do you know that? Why is he taking the time to manipulate your mind in that condition? Why can't he let you alone? Why did he have to kill Malcolm? Why did he have to kill Martin? Even? Why did he have to hunt down men and women like that? Why? Because your time, your hour is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The Father desires to give you the kingdom. Nat read that text that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and his heart was aflame. And that fateful day on August the 21st, as they met, carried on their revolutionary war, they would have won had it not been for one main factor. And that factor was a lack of discipline on the part of those engaged in the revolutionary struggle. What did I say? A lack of discipline on the part of those engaged in the revolutionary struggle. Learn from that. Just as you are today when nobody can't tell you nothing. Brother or sister come to you and say, now brother, sister, we got to correct it. Nigga, get away from me, don't tell me nothing. I do what I want to do. You're not free to do what you want to do. My life is wrapped up in your life. And your life is wrapped up in my life. So we have to be able to tell each other something. Your ego is so big, so great, that you can't allow another brother or sister some space. You got to do all the talking. You got to have the only doctrine and the only program for our people. Back in those days, they were 3 miles from Jerusalem. How many miles? From the county seat. And that said, let's press on, I must needs go to Jerusalem. And they said, no, let's rest a while. Look how well we've done. Look how many we got. We have 70 now. We're doing good. Let's celebrate. They had been sipping from the cider vat every place they stopped. It got high, what I say. And they got high. And when you get high, you don't want to do nothing but groove. Because you don't want nobody to blow your high. They was 3 miles from Jerusalem, the county seat, but they didn't want to blow their high. So Nat looked at him and made a fatal mistake. See, slaves need strong leadership. What did I say? Yeah, you do. You need somebody to come in and tell you, you got to stop doing this, you got to stop doing that, you got to clean this up, you got to clean it. Because when they don't do that, you just run wild. You just do some of everything, and you can call it revolutionary. When you do it, well, the smoke is revolutionary, you know. And he told them, all right, you can take a rest. And that was the fatal move. Some white folks had gotten away and warned the others. And by the time Nat got his men rallied to fight again, 18 white men met him. They were engaged in battle. The white men ran. They pursued him over the hill and were surrounded by others. Then Nat's forces had to break up. And you know the story from there. It took them 2 months to catch him, too. 2 months to catch him. But that never would have happened if it had not been for a lack of discipline on the part of the revolutionaries. What does that say to us today, brothers and sisters? We're only in this situation today because of a lack of mental, spiritual, and physical discipline in our dealings with ourselves and with each other. No, brother, we don't have a long ways to go. It's just down the road. We got to move on it. And that is the message of the Creator for you tonight. I'm reminded of the story as I close out that when Gabriel Prophet was planning one of the greatest slave uprisings in the history of this abominable country. I have no love for America. I never have. What do I have to love in it? And it was a well-planned, well-laid out plot, except, unfortunately, some undisciplined Negroes told the white man what was going on. But this is one of the systems of communications that they were using back then, which says to me the greatest of all revolutionary principles is that you must be able to make a way out of no way. You must size up and assess the situation and say, it may be a mountain standing between me and it, but I'm going round, under, through, and over. But I'm going to get to my goal. Black man, over 2,000 years ago, about 200 years before the birth of the black Messiah, stood before snow-capped mountains with the goal of defeating the Roman Empire. And they said, but Hannibal, look at the Alps. And he said, what Alps? And when the Romans looked, elephants and black men with cornrowed hair, looking like lions in the face, but dead there behind, at the gates of Rome. And if he had not been betrayed by Massinissa, he would have won that war. And it would have decided the course of history from that day forward. We have so much to learn from that. And then, when Gabriel Prosser looked at his situation, white folks now had gotten wind that there was a conspiracy in the air. And they said, well, how did this man reach so many thousands of slaves? I thought they was happy. How did he reach them? They said, well, he's a preacher, man. And when he would be preaching, he would be giving them code messages as to what to do and where to meet. He said, well, from now on, when a nigger preaches, a white man's got to be there. Yes, they did. They couldn't preach, a black man couldn't preach in a black church on the plantation because the black church originally was a revolutionary headquarters. Do you know that? We got to get the church back to what it was. We got to redeem the church. Don't forsake it, redeem it. And there was a white man sitting there listening to the preacher, checking every word. There's a white man in a black church today looking at you too. Black preacher just a preacher. White man hanging back up there on the wall, overseeing you. They've got it down to a science now. You don't have to be there in the flesh. You're going to respect that picture up there. And you're not going to do nothing to make him angry, who died for you and bled on the cross, that good white man. So, when they couldn't get the message through that way, they said, well, he's still recruiting. How is he doing it? They say he's getting to them through the singing. The songs they would sing, my Lord, what a morning, when the stars begin to fall. Come by here, my Lord, come by here. And that one that was written for sweet old Reverend Mother Harriet Tubman, lead me and guide me along the way. Boy, if you lead me, I cannot. Lord, let me walk each day with thee. Lead me, oh Lord, lead me. And she'd feel the side of the trees where the moss was growing. And she'd know she was headed for the north. Sweet soul indeed. When they found out about the singing, they wouldn't let them sing in that area down there around Richmond, Virginia. But they were still recruiting, and the white man couldn't figure out how. So they're doing it through the prayer. Because you know black folks pray out loud. Lord Jesus, help me! My mother used to do that. I used to be so ashamed. Folks outside, when I was a teenager, hear my mother in the house just praying. So they passed a law that a slave could only, because you couldn't stop him from praying. You cannot stop the black man from praying. The black man is a worshipful person. Black people are spiritual people. They are going to worship their Creator in one form or another. It's their nature to do that. So they passed the law that he'd have to put a bucket over his head. That's why when you see some sketches of old black churches, you see a bucket in the middle of the floor. But when them folks get to shouting and praying, you have to put a bucket over his head. He couldn't pray out loud. That's right. White folks passed that law. Well, when they couldn't preach, they couldn't sing, couldn't pray out loud, but they were still organized. How were they doing? One day in the field, slave was picking cotton. Somebody said, you know, the time is at hand. We're ready to move now. And there's some brothers and sisters way down the road in yonder piece, many miles, that must get our message. How will they get our message? And somebody said, oh Lord, have mercy now. And somebody else picked up and said, yes, 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 Lord. And all over everywhere, white folks were standing in awe. The black folks was humming, moaning. And that's how they carried the message. Because they knew that a revolutionary had to make a way out of no way. And that the basis of making a way out of no way was communication. Brothers and sisters, we must communicate with each other. No matter whether we believe exactly the same way or not, whether we agree exactly the same way or not, we must come to each other and say, brother, sister, I'm with you. Let's see what we can do together. Let's work it out together. Brothers and sisters, the hour is hand. Black man's time has come. There's a train a-coming. There's a train of liberation, a train of freedom. It's a train that only you can, but it's a segregated train. I know you don't like that because you had to sit in the back of the other one. But you're going to sit in the front of this train. There's a train a-coming. Get on board. Get on board. Praise God Almighty. Get on board. Sante Sana, brothers and sisters.